Today I want to talk about a four-letter word that we all know. And it is something that is in an integral part of our lives. The four-letter word is work, W-O-R-K. And that word is associated with two other four-letter words. One is love and the other one is hate. And it is sometimes that sort of sense of, wow, I love what I do, that's great, and it's all up here and it's exciting. And sometimes it's where I hate what I do, and that's the thing that's right in the middle of my forehead. I'm thinking, wow, what's going on here? Why is it that sometimes I love what I do and sometimes I hate what I do? In today's world, the connection, I think, that holds that key to either the love part or the hate part is stress. In the first part of what we did, we looked at keeping calm and carrying on. And for all of us, we live in three possible zones. The first zone is the calm zone, where everything is smooth sailing, it's fairly relaxed, and there's a lot of smiling going on. There's a lot of, and isn't life great? And you're sleeping well, you're eating well, you're resting, your digesting is good. The second part is what I call the ideal zone. Because we all need some level of stress. Without any stress at all, frankly, you'd be dead. So stress is something that's integral to work, something that makes you feel alive, that activates your thinking process, that makes the energy, the vibrance of life, the colors of life are all linked to some degree of stress. The problem lies when you hit the third level, the panic level. And in this level, you're existing in the fight or flight. Just for another recap, do have a look at the first bit. I'll go into more, we've gone into more detail of it. But sufficient to say, in this place, there's brain freeze. In this place, you can't think clearly. In this place, worry has greater relevance to where you are and what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So why has that now come to the fore? Well, since we've had an epidemic in place, you've had the stay at home, you've had the keep to yourself, you've had isolation, you've had focused into a device. So it might be that you're tied to either this or something a little larger like a laptop. And the problem with that is that because you're tied to something that you're taking with you at all points in time, pre-COVID you used to say, well, your work life is your work life and your home life is your home life. And what separated that was a ritual of either getting dressed in the morning, combing your hair, brushing your teeth, catching a train, a bus, a car, or walking. And so that clear separation, that boundary has disappeared. So someone told me the other day, he said, you know, it's 12:30, and I thought, I need to get out for lunch. So he went out, and he came back half an hour later, and he looked at his device, and he found that using Slack, his boss pinged him. And he thought, wow, the ping epidemic wasn't just something that recently happened. The ping epidemic has been going on ever since. He's been ping, ping, ping. And he thought to himself, oh, it doesn't feel right, because the stress level started to rise. It's like there's someone looking at you. There's someone expecting something from you. There's someone your boss, who's real or imaginary, is there on your shoulder. And that sensation raises our stress levels. That point at which we're feeling hypervigilant. And hypervigilance is something that we've seen more and more over time. The other effect of the change in work and working practice is an element of trust. So in the days when you used to meet with people you work with, where do you think trust was built? Trust and friendships are built around coffee machines. They're built around lunches. They're built around going out to the pub. They're built around traveling back and forth together. But now that we're in a place where we are staring at a screen for most of the day, how many people would say, you know what, I would love to talk to you, but I don't fancy walking around with headphones, cleaning my kitchen, and talking to you about whatever, comes to mind. The small talk, all of that's disappeared. The idea of, well, so what is somebody doing at work? Whether they're working well, whether they're not working well, who's performing, where am I in the pecking order? All of these important or not so important discussions have disappeared. And with that comes a sense of more and more isolation. The isolation piece also is important in that we are now more and more connected, and that's the paradox of it, where I'm connected to you through Zoom, I'm connected to you through apps like Slack or Microsoft Teams, where we're doing something, we're collaborating, but at the same time, there's a distance. And an hour, 2 hours later, after 6 Zoom meetings, you realize that there's a headache, there's my eyes hurt, and you stand up and you go, oh, what's going on there? Because part of this phenomenon of screen time is that we are physically, emotionally zooming in. Our eyes are now fairly fixed in a tunnel vision. That as you gaze into whatever you're gazing into, that is part of the fight and flight. That is part of the sympathetic nervous system that is fully engaged and active. That seeking answers, seeking ways and means of solving problems, which is what you're hired to do at work, is now multiplied several degrees by the mere fact of gazing into this screen. So we are now in a situation where the level in which we're in calm, or the time in calm, and the time in your ideal performance is now diminishing, and we're moving up into a different place. That's important to realize where we are and why we are where we are. Psychologists say that stress comes from 3 main factors. The first is a sense of loss of control. The second is uncertainty. And the third is a lack of information. So, can you imagine when once upon a time you'd be on a train and the train just stops? And the longer it stopped in wherever it is, in the middle of nowhere, with no announcements, there's a sense of, well, I don't know where we are. So there's uncertainty. There's nobody saying anything. There's no information. And thirdly, I can't drive the train, so I have no control. And the longer you sit in that sort of situation, the higher the stress levels. And in the days when we didn't have mobile phones and you'd be sitting there, the higher the stress level would go. So today, when globally we're in the same sort of situation, but it is magnified. It is magnified because uncertainty exists about, what is happening? When can I get on holiday? Can I get on holiday? What do I need to go on a plane with if I want to go on a plane? Information it's everywhere, and it's so confused because who do I believe? Who do I trust? And I can't control what's going on. So what happens to us all as a population is we're now in a sense where we're not vigilant, we're hyper vigilant. We're now not just on edge at work, but we're edge on work, but more so. And everything is ratcheted up. And at the same time, the stats say that people in the United Kingdom are working on average 2.5 hours more per week. So that our energy levels are now lower because we're now more focused on work and less so on rest. So what do we do about it? Today I want to share 2 ways in which we can further work with the stress levels, with our sympathetic, with our parasympathetic. I look at our bodies in some ways like a fridge. So you know what your fridge is like at home. You put stuff in it. You put your meat, you put your eggs, you put your veg, and you just fill it. So if you keep filling it, it comes a point of time where it's going to need some work doing to it. It's going to need some taking out of the bit. And part of the stress piece of it for our bodies, is our bodies are like that fridge. That the stress we feel, unless it is gotten rid of in some form or fashion, it will build up and build up. So at times I'd be sitting at home and we'd be watching a program on the television. And I'd just reach over and, being the kind person that I am, just sort of start to rub my wife's back. And then I'd hear, didn't realize that was sore. Ooh, that's painful. I said, oh, sorry. And he said, no, it's okay. It feels good at the same time. And what that says to me is that there is a tension that's trapped somewhere in our bodies, and we don't realize it's there. But know that when it's something, that massage piece comes in, it relaxes the muscles. I also like to run. Well, for me it's running. It mightn't be running for most people. That slow way which I move, that's slightly a little faster than walking. And I discovered after doing it for the last 18 months or so that there's something called DOMS, and it stands for Delayed Onset Muscle Soreness. So after a run, I tend to use one of 2 things. I use a golf ball, and I start to rub my muscles, and it releases the tension within. Or I use this piece of kit, which is a foam roller. And a foam roller and a golf ball do exactly the same thing. They cause pain. And in that, it starts to release the tension in the muscles. It starts to release some of the knots that have been left over from the exertion and the exercise that I've been doing. So you might look at me and think, well, okay, so what's that got to do with me? Because I don't run. So DOMS, in exercise terms, like I said, is delayed onset muscle soreness. But it also, in life terms, can be delayed onset muscular or mental soreness. It's that soreness that exists within us if the stress level gets to this point and it stays at this point. That we need something to release it. And massage works in that way. It releases stress. There are people who've said to me they've been into places where they've been massaged, or they've heard of someone who's in the middle of a massage session and they start to cry because there's something that's gone on that's remained trapped within our bodies. So physical massage is a key way in which we can release some of that stress that's built in. A lot of the work that people like Gabor Mate and James Gordon, who are psychologists who've had years and years of experience with dealing with stress and with trauma, is saying exactly the same thing. That people who've had experiences way back perhaps, or maybe in the last few years or the last few weeks, have had tension that is there within our bodies and remains trapped. So it's something that along the lines of, your memories are not simply in your head and your mind. Your memories are part of who you are in the physical space, not just the mental space. So you're at work and things are stressing you out, and you're thinking, well, what do I do? How do I relieve this stress? You're thinking, well, I can't go out and get a massage, can't I? Well, no. The second way in which I think we can relieve some of the stress, and I'll explain how this works in the work environment, is dance. And straight away you're thinking, are you gone off the edge? You want me to start to dance at work? So James Gordon is a psychiatrist who's had over 50 years of dealing with trauma. And you might say to me, well, I don't actually have trauma. But the definition that James Gordon uses of trauma is stress events or episodes or periods that are longer in time that we all experience. So he's worked in war-torn areas like Bosnia, he's worked in Kosovo, he's worked with firefighters who are post 9/11, and he's worked in 2010 with victims post the earthquake in Haiti. And his work centers around releasing that stress, and it involves movement. It involves the release of things. So let me describe what he does. He describes it in 3 phases. He talks about where people need to shake loose the tension within. So he talks about it in terms of movement to music. The second phase in where you gain awareness of that, what is inside. And the third phase is where the movement is more rhythmical, it's dance, but he doesn't say dance as such, because dance stirs things of, well, you have to be trained, you have to be equipped, you have to look good, all that sort of stuff. But no, none of that is essential. Let me show you what it looks like. Very briefly, shaking is moving your head around, and then pause. And then perhaps do like we have demonstrated in the last episode, is that I can feel my heart beating, it's beating faster. I can feel the breathing starting in the chest. I can feel starting in the abdomen. I can feel whatever it is that you're sensing within. And the third phase of what James Gordon uses in his way of working with people is more rhythmical. It's longer lasting. It's like, it's move around a bit more. Feel it. Get some rhythm going. And not just shaking it, but actually swaying. Whatever it is that you do, the actual movement is not important. But it's the sense of doing something to feel your body moving. How does this relate to work? One guy said to me, you know what? What I do is I take my headphones, plug it in, get my phone, put it in my pocket, go to the toilet and start to do this. The shaking, the relaxing, the awareness, and then a bit further. And why is that so important? Because for all of us, stress is related to the feeling of insecurity. It's the feeling of danger. And for the guy who said that, he said, you know what? When I went into the bathroom and I started to do this, I knew nobody was looking. I knew that out there, it may feel unsafe, but in here, in this 2x2 space, it was okay. And he started to laugh as he described what he did. And that's the other important thing, that the mere act of laughing about it as an experience, remembering a pleasant experience, a funny experience where you can laugh at yourself, is so important, because all of that releases the stress level. So while I'm not advocating that we all run into a bathroom and do this, it is possible. What Dr. Gordon describes is he does this within groups. And the important thing about this in a group setting comes back to that isolation piece. So we are no longer in groups for huge periods of time. We are in small, isolated pockets. We're in places where the sense of enclosure, the sense of entrapment, creates a tension of its own. And if you were to do this in a group, and you now are able to do this in a group, what happens is that our mirror neurons, which are part of our wiring, is able to pick up what somebody else is doing. So I can look at somebody else and I can copy what they're doing. And that's exactly what mirror neurons are about. When you're isolated at home and your partner, your friend, your housemate is feeling exactly the same thing and they're doing exactly the same thing. So I look at you and your face is as long as mine. And so what's the point of copying that? But when you do movement in a communal space and somebody's doing this and say, oh yeah, somebody's doing this, and say, oh, I'll give that a try. And somebody is lifting their legs, somebody's doing this, and think, oh yeah, I can do that. And we start to copy, we start to mirror something that brings up a sense of joy within. We copy the smile, we copy the laughter, and it feels good. So the communal piece is really important in terms of our mirroring of good feelings, in terms of a sense of freedom. So you might ask, well, so when do you think we should do this? The suggestion in terms of movement, in terms of, well, maybe first thing in the morning when you get up and you think, oh, I need to just relax your shoulders a little bit. Just that. Just that. How long do you do it for? 2 minutes if you've got 2 minutes. Do it while brushing your teeth. Might be a little bit dangerous, but hey, try it and see. Move around while you're making your porridge, washing up, whatever it is. That release of your body is connected to the release that's in your mind. It's connected to the release that's in your spirit. And it's there. It's all connected. For far too long, we've separated out mind, body, and spirit. But in some ways, you can recapture that wholeness by starting at the bottom and moving up. By releasing something physically, you release a mental blockage, you release a spiritual blockage. Have you ever noticed, if you tell somebody, just calm down, relax, it doesn't seem to work. You can never tell somebody to start at the top and release the tension. The tension is usually released from the bottom up. The other way you can do it, or the other time you can do it, is the last thing after work. As you shut the lid on your computer and you do this dance, the dance becomes a ritual. The dance becomes the end point. The dance signifies that I have put it down and I'm now at home. Especially if your home and your work is the same. Especially if you've got family around you, especially if your kids are around you, and you have now signified mentally and physically that this period of time has ended and this period has begun. So this period I'm away from home, and this period I'm at home. For this period, it is stress, it is fight, it is flight, it may be freeze as we're in front of a screen. In this period, I'm in a rest and digest period of time. The other time you can do this is all the time. For 2 seconds, for 5 minutes. You set your app that reminds you, I've been sitting for an hour. I can do this. I can do this. Maybe you can do it together with people you work with on a Zoom call. Imagine if you do a Zoom dance. Wouldn't that be something to record? And that to me is again, it's the communal part of where we are as people, and the freedom to laugh and enjoy yourself, even in that space, that you take yourself from a panic or an ideal into a calm zone, and then you can move back and forth between the two. And it's that sort of movement, that sort of sense of movement. It's like oil. It's the oil that releases the sympathetic from always being in control and bringing the parasympathetic back into play and moving it back and forth. Because resilience in work or resilience in life is based on a seesaw movement of stress and rest. Stress and rest. And so movement is a key function in all of that. So work is a four-letter word, but it doesn't mean we have to hate what we do. It doesn't mean that you're trapped in this sense of, I have no control, I have lots of uncertainty, I have lack of information, and all of these things are real in terms of the environment. But we do have control of who we are, what we think about, how we move, how we relieve that pressure for an individual and the corporate. That look alright. Okay. Oh, that's not helping. I think I need a massage. Yeah. Keep calm. Relax the eyes.